Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 15th of August. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that easily by giving us a call on the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. Find us online at weather.gov/Alaska, or if you prefer, start at weather.gov/Fairbanks/Anchorage or /Juneau. Those are your weather forecast offices that serve your part of Alaska. And from there, you can get to your local forecast information, climate information, a look at the satellite and radar, and a whole lot more. If you still can't find what you're looking for, whether it's from the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, the National Tsunami Warning Center, or the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center, please let me know. david.snider@noaa.gov is a very easy way to find me, and I usually get back with you on email pretty quickly. So let me know what I can do for you and how I can serve you better. Let's take a look at the advisories out there. High surf advisories continue for the northern Arctic coast from Utqiagvik all the way down toward the western Arctic coast through Point Hope and across the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Again, high winds are expected to continue. Those winds upwards around 45 to 50 miles per hour at times should continue through tonight and into tomorrow. Blustery conditions there behind a cold front that you can see on the satellite picture this afternoon. The other part about that, though, is that it is encouraging drier conditions across the North Slope. Not a whole lot of precipitation falling with this at this point. We still have some drier areas across the upper Yukon Valley, across the upper Kobuk and Noatak Valleys, the northwest coast as we just saw, and across the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast as well. The rest of us in south central, southwest, and southeast, of course, have seen enough wet conditions as of late to encourage a lack of fire danger across most of the region. So right now, some of the drier parts of the state, in fact the driest parts of the state, are seeing the greatest risk of fire danger coupled with an increase in the wind. Let's take a look at the satellite picture now. And as we go through the day, you can see the clouds moving in from northwest to south and east. This, of course, is the front that is dropping southward, and along that boundary there, we continue to see more wind moving in from the west and the north. That's also going to be moving the ice pack along as we go throughout the period. Across south central, plenty of clouds across the region into southwest. You can pick out clearly an area of low pressure here across the southwest coast. And plenty of moisture streaming northward across the Gulf of Alaska as we've gone throughout the day today. This is that remaining channel of moisture that's been working its way through the north and eastern Gulf since we saw a decent helping of rainfall across northern and central parts of southeast just in the last week. A look at the infrared satellite picture gives us a little more detail across the north. You can see some of that flow coming in and starting to bend off a little bit more to the south across the western Bering Sea. As this spreads out a little bit more, I think we're going to see this frontal boundary stall across the Brooks Range. That will keep the coldest air up across the North Slope and keep most areas from seeing any tremendous amount of rainfall across the central and southern parts of the region without those combating air masses across central and southwest and southeastern sections of Alaska. But we are going to see waves of rain working through. The general flow right now is from west to east, so we're going to see that broad flow of somewhat progressive weather patterns continue across the region, but most notably will be the North Slope, seeing a much stronger wind pattern for the next 24 hours or so. So again, that high wind warning continues for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Here's the weather chart as it stands this afternoon. Colder air is sweeping in. Behind that, areas of fog for the Chukchi coast, areas of light rain around generally the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range all the way out toward the Kobuk and Noatak Valleys, Seward Peninsula. As you saw on the satellite picture, the swirl of moisture there is coupled to that low-pressure system at 1,007 millibars. Southwest and south central, looking at some light rainfall. Same goes for Sitka all the way up through Cross Sound, almost to Yakutat. Not quite, a little bit of drier weather there for the moment. Low pressure across the central and southern parts of the Gulf. That also bringing in some wetter air that's probably not going to lift a whole lot further northward as we head through tonight. High pressure sliding eastward and sitting right over the Haida Gwaii region, 1,022 millibars there, so enough to kind of hold back some of that. Might get some patchy areas of fog underneath that ridge out to the west. Low pressure will have none of that. looking for areas of widespread showers across the Bristol Bay region, Kodiak Island all the way through the eastern chain and just north of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor and just south of St. Paul and St. George. As we get into the eastern interior, Copper River Valley, looking for some showers there, and then fog a little bit more likely as we get just north of the Alaska Range into the Tanana Valley and westward into the Yukon Valley. A look further west shows high pressure across the central and western Bering Sea, 1,020 millibars there. Low pressure sitting across the Aleutian Chain. And there's a cold front that was working its way southward fairly quickly, but now has stalled out across the Brooks Range and the North Slope. So that will keep that pressure gradient intact across the Brooks Range and across the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast. So once again, it will be windy, but that also means added areas of turbulence as we go ahead through Thursday. So plan for that and watch for areas of light rain and fog there, hopefully settling down some of the fire danger too. Low pressure sitting across the central and eastern Gulf at 1,017 millibars will allow that warmer air to sneak its way into the Clarence Strait, perhaps the Dixon entrance too. Showers will continue across most of the Alaska Range and south central as we go through your Thursday. Better chance for steadier rainfall from Prince William Sound up across the northern Gulf Coast. Showers down through Kodiak Island and the eastern chain with areas of fog from Nunivak Island westward towards St. Matthew and the southern Bering Sea. Notice again, this pressure pattern is pretty much allowing that air to move from west to east. And in some cases, that may be fairly windy across the Bering Strait and the Brooks Range. So if you are flying, plan on some bumpy conditions at times, especially across the north and the western regions. For the central and western chain, we expect low pressure just to the south of the chain to guide up moisture and cloud cover across the area. And working with high pressure just to the north there and just east of Russia, we expect that trend to keep a lot of the cloud cover and moisture right over the chain itself. Going into Friday, that boundary up north doesn't move too much, but it does look like it is getting a little bit of a reinforcing push of colder air behind it, so we may see this drifting a little bit further south as we get into your Saturday and Sunday. One thing that will keep that from happening, or at least as quickly, will be high pressure that is now starting to strengthen across the Bering Sea. That means more fog and low stratus, of course, especially on the eastern side of this and closer to the western Alaska coastline. So Nunivak Island, St. Matthew, St. Paul, St. George, all looking at increased areas of stratus and fog as we get into your Friday and probably Saturday as well. A little bit of a disruptive force will be this low pressure system here south of Kodiak Island. That's around 992 millibars. That is going to see the pressure gradient strengthen a little bit more here. Slightly stronger south and easterly flow means a better chance of rain for Sand Point, up to Kodiak, up through Lake Iliamna eventually. But you'll notice this ridge of high pressure extends all the way from the Bering through south central and into the eastern Gulf. So there will be some areas of fog, light winds, and somewhat variable winds at that, without a whole lot of guidance or strengthening from the wind coming in under this high pressure system. On the eastern side of this is southeast, looking for some areas of light rainfall there across the southern part of the Panhandle. One thing to note too, the Canadians are talking about increased areas of wildfire on the other side of the Canadian border this afternoon. So if you do get into a little bit of smoke, that's probably where that's coming from, up around the very southern end of Yukon and the British Columbia border there, Haines Junction, some of those places that are seeing some wildfires in the area. So if the winds are just right, you might get into some of that wildfire smoke across southeast. Something to keep in mind there, and probably not something that's coming in out of southeast itself. But you never know. Anytime you wonder, take a look online. There's usually some answers there. Here's a look at the temperatures as we get into tomorrow morning. You'll notice most areas are in the 40s for the interior there, especially the Yukon Valley. Look at that. Still fairly mild, but maybe a note of crisp fallness in the air just a little bit. If you look up toward Anaktuvuk Pass, 35 degrees in the morning. Utqiagvik around 38, 39 around Kaktovik, 47 for Nome, lower to mid-40s for Bristol Bay. St. Paul, you're looking at 46, and 40s and 50s for parts of southeast. Kodiak Island, 44. High temperatures for the daytime tomorrow expected to reach into the upper 50s and lower 60s for most of the middle Tanana Valley and the eastern interior. Lower 60s around Eagle, 47 for Kaktovik, Prudhoe Bay, and lower 50s for you. Looks like Kotzebue, 61 degrees, 57 in Nome, 50 around St. Lawrence Island. Southwestern temperatures in the upper 50s to low 60s. South Central holding in the upper 50s again, another cool day. Our warm days in Anchorage anyway, with 60 degrees plus. That streak ended fairly quickly. Lower to mid 60s across southeast. Kodiak Island 56 and Adak and Atka both at 52. Overnight low temperatures back in the 40s and 50s for many in south central, southwest, closer to 40 degrees. Nunivak Island 47, Bethel about 45. Unalakleet looking at about 50 degrees. Galena a little bit cooler in the upper 40s for you. Fort Yukon 49 degrees. Utqiagvik around 35 with Wainwright a little bit of a milder 40 degrees I should say. Southeast upper 40s and lower 50s. Sitka 52 up to 61 by the afternoon on Friday. South central temperatures warming up, a little more sunshine is expected there, looking for lower 60s for the Cook Inlet region. About 61 in Bethel. Looks like Kotzebue Sound temperatures should make it into the 50s and 60s, but cooler weather around the Brooks Range.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather now. IFR conditions are expected to hold up across the North Slope for your Thursday morning. You'll see patchy areas of IFR across South Central. Some of that north and east of the Talkeetnas and north of Dehne Pass. Around Kodiak Island, the Barren Islands, and southwest into parts of the Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutian Range, you'll see IFR there to start. And hit and miss IFR across the southern inner channels and just about to the outer coast. Most of southeast will start out under MVFR, as well as most of the Tanana Valley and eastward, as well as Prince William Sound, South Central, and south and western parts of the coastline. As you get up into the afternoon, you'll notice some improvements across southwest, some drier air moving through a little bit. South Central and southeast also expected to continue under MVFR, but you will notice some minor improvements south of Port Alexander into the Clarence Strait and parts of the Cook Inlet around Anchorage and into the Susitna Valley. Notice some areas across the west coast also looking for slight improvements there, but IFR will linger around St. Matthew all the way out toward the central and western chain, and again, the North Slope, as I said. Across Friday morning, we're expecting IFR to linger across the North Slope, across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys into the southern and western parts of the Seward Peninsula, the outer coast of the YK Delta, and south central Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island, and across northern parts of southeast. By the afternoon, some impressive improvement across southeast at this point. You'll notice VFR conditions generally south of Juneau and Sitka. MVFR lingering around Prince William Sound, the Susitna Valley, and into Dehne Pass, and many of your Alaska Range passes. The west expected to see IFR conditions across the west and northern Bering Sea, and south of Kodiak Island out towards Sand Point and further west. Kobuk and Noatak Valley also lingering under IFR. Here's your pass conditions for Thursday. Tomorrow we're expecting AKwx to start around IFR conditions. There was some improvement throughout the day. Adigan Pass also looking for IFR to start. As we get into Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, expecting MVFR really most of the day there, but you may see some more improvement around Rainy Pass. VFR conditions certainly possible by the afternoon. For Windy Pass, a look at IFR probably to start the day. Improvements toward MVFR conditions may be possible there. As for Isabel Pass, the further east you go, conditions are a little bit more likely to be MVFR through most of the day, so you might want to aim eastward a little bit. Dehne Pass, we expect to see a start around IFR conditions there, marginal by the afternoon. Portage Pass holds around marginal levels again with kind of a lot of slop moving into Prince William Sound through most of the day, and Chilkoot and White Pass expected to be marginal through most of your Thursday. Freezing levels indicate a cool pool of air certainly sitting out around Sand Point out toward Dutch Harbor and Nikolsky. Those levels there at or even below 4,000 feet. Most of the mainland holding between 6,000 and 8,000 feet. The freezing level there at the surface just north of Kaktovik and Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, so not quite in reach of the coastline just yet. Freezing levels across southeast stretch all the way from about 6,000 feet and below around Yakutat and Icy Cape to over 10,000 to 12,000 feet as you get down toward Haida Gwaii. Out to the west, you can see slightly cooler air around the Gulf of Anadyr and warmer weather trying to build in from the North Pacific, but generally speaking, everywhere is still slightly on the warmer side of things. And when you look at icing and the moisture that's available, levels to get into significant icing seem to be at or even above 10,000 feet. Some levels are significantly higher than this. So there are some patchy areas here that might drop down below. The greatest concern I would have would be the region out here across southwest, because remember, that's where our cool pool is here. So keep your eye on that if you're flying out across southwest, the Bristol Bay region, or the Alaska Peninsula as we go through your Thursday. Up north, again, there is a possibility for some light freezing, but most of that is really above 10,000 feet across the North Slope. Here's a jet stream, and the driving factor in our weather right now is a very pronounced trough. We've got several circulations across Alaska. One of those is kind of fading away, but the next one is trying to take the reins, as it were. And low pressure here across the Bering Sea really gearing up with wind speeds picking up across the central and eastern Aleutians from 100 to 125 knots, and the northern stream around 90 knots, certainly helping to keep things moving along from west to east. At 9,000 feet, you can see kind of a general west to easterly flow. Faster speeds across the north slope for sure, 45 to 50 knots at 9,000 feet. A south and westerly flow, gentle across the Gulf, and you can see our interruptions of low pressure here across the southern Bering. 15 knots coming in across the Alaska Peninsula, and more of an offshore flow on the eastern side of Bristol Bay. A mirrored reflection of what we see here at 3,000 feet then. A light winds wrapping around that area of low pressure, but a general westerly push coming across the mainland and light winds across the Gulf. Most speeds across the mainland only 5 to about 25 knots or so. So if there is going to be turbulence, it's going to be north around the Brooks Range, below about 4,000 to 6,000 feet. Considerable moderate, more likely there and across the upper Yukon Valley and into the Tanana Valley for your Thursday. A little bit of chop out across the western chain. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider, and joining me again is Cindy Preller. She's the Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska Region's National Weather Service. Thanks again for joining us, Cindy.
Thanks for having me back, Dave.
Sure thing. And I love saying Tsunami Program Manager for Alaska's National Weather Service because that's not weather. Why is the Tsunami Program part of the National Weather Service?
Well, it's because the Weather Service absolutely rocks at warning people for every kind of, devastating natural hazard.
Mm-hmm. The mission of the Weather Service is to protect life and property. And so how does the Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska, which is a very unique office, again, within the Weather Service, it's not weather, how do those folks help us protect life and property?
The National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer is a national warning center, and we analyze seismic traces 24/7 all around the world. So when there's an earthquake anywhere on the planet, we see it and analyze it within minutes.
Within minutes, and
Within
there's
minutes.
actually a goal to have it under, was it 5 minutes?
If there is a tsunami warning to be issued for continental America, we must get that out, or shoot to get that out in 5 minutes.
Okay. Now that's not something I have ever learned to do, so I know it would be a struggle for me to do that under probably hours, but it is fascinating to watch, and the office is open on a regular basis for tours, right?
Absolutely, come by Friday.
Okay.
Yep, every Friday at 1, 2, and 3 p.m. and they're open public free tours. And it's the most interesting place on the planet. You really should check it out.
Okay, and the office team is made up of people that are earth scientists, not meteorologists or atmospheric scientists. Talk about some of the types of people that work there.
Right, we are out of place in our National Weather Service, but we are geologists, geophysicists, oceanographers. We even have an astrophysicist on board, computer software architects, electronic technicians that are brilliant and innovative. Our software is all written in-house. Our instrumentation is designed in-house. So it's a really, really unique place, and it's just a couple handfuls of people that work there. So
sure.
Yeah.
One of my favorite ways to get a tsunami alert message is on Twitter.
Right.
And I can follow the Twitter address, and we'll put that up on the screen for you there. But it's usually a very quick message that tells you initially what the magnitude of an earthquake could be and about where its epicenter was. What are some of the other ways that you can get that alert message?
Well, Twitter's my favorite too.
Yeah.
And you don't even need a Twitter account to receive it. So
That's
it just comes in like an SMS message. But you can also receive it via email, weather radio, of course, the crawler on your television screen, on the internet, Google Alerts.
Right.
Marine radio if you're out in harbors and boats. Actually, marine radio is probably,
yeah, it is a good one.
That's our partnership with the Coast Guard. We're really grateful for that, absolutely. But there's a variety of ways in dissemination.
Okay.
And locally, excuse me, I'm sorry, but locally in the communities, the sirens will go off as well.
Right. So lots of different ways to get that very important message very quickly when that matters to you. One of the ways that the Warning Center practices with communities is a test on a yearly basis, right?
Right.
How does that work?
Thanks for bringing that up. It's a controversial issue, but it's super important to help us warn better and really serve Alaskans. So the week of March 27th, the commemoration of the 1964 event, for that week we have a Tsunami Preparedness Week every year. We like communities to get out and do drills and practice and do everything we can to raise awareness. And part of that is a live code test where we actually issue the warning message live and we activate the emergency alert system, which means sirens go off, the TV crawler happens, and it's a test.
We're doing everything that would normally happen without the real threat of the tsunami, just to practice as much as possible.
Right, and this is a major partnership with the State of Alaska, Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Management, the Emergency Operations Center, and the Alaska Broadcasters Association. Without the media, we wouldn't be able to do this. So the three groups really work tightly together to do our best to warn, educate the public that this is happening so they don't wonder and get scared about it. It has been remarkable what we've learned. I mean, it pretty much breaks somewhere every time, but then we fix it and it gets better. So a quick example is just a few years ago, we used to, when we issued a message, it would activate the entire state. Right? I mean, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, everybody would be in tsunami warning. And so now we can regionalize it to where the actual event is taking place. That's pretty huge.
Right. So identifying points of failure and also points of success and making sure we continue down that successful path so that folks are warned as quickly and accurately as possible.
Absolutely. And, you know, to get our communities involved to prep themselves, prep their businesses, prep their tourism, prep their schools, you know, just make this an annual thing they need to be doing.
Right. So as citizens wanting to be prepared, we should be prepared to learn more about that test that's happening usually toward the end of March every year.
Right, and you should be happy that it's happening.
Right.
Instead of upset. Definitely be happy that it's happening.
Right. Just as we test tornado sirens in tornado country, we also have to test the tsunami program as well.
Right, because there isn't enough time. You know, for a local tsunami, the wave will arrive in less than 2 minutes. So it's super important that people know what to do.
Very good. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for helping us know more about the Tsunami Ready program and the test. And the Tsunami Warning Center is a very unique and very important job in the National Weather Service that is just fascinating to me every time I visit the office. So,
it's the only one for the continent. You really should come check it out.
It's an international effort.
Yes.
Wonderful stuff. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you, Dave.
And thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
On to your sea ice update now. You'll notice that with stronger westerly winds working across the north coast, you're going to see some of this pack ice being shifted to the north and east. With a little bit of marginal ice around Kaktovik, you'll probably notice some greater differences there and closer to the coastline. But there is plenty of marginal ice all the way from Utqiagvik eastward toward Dead Horse and Prudhoe Bay. And still looking at substantial open water south and west of Wainwright, all the way down toward Point Hope and Point Leyte. This edge may be on the move. This edge may be tilting a little bit to the north and east. For the very latest sea ice information anytime, head to weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. Take a look at the forecast as well as sea surface temperatures there. Here's a look at the forecast now for southeast. We've got gentle southerlies working through the inner channel. Some slightly stronger winds across the northern Lynn Canal, 20 knots and 4-foot seas there. Northwesterlies through the Clarence Strait, 10 knots and 2-foot seas. And notice those light winds extend all the way up toward Prince William Sound. Southerlies around 10 knots and seas holding around 4 to 5 feet. As we get into Friday, we're going to see a little bit more of an influence from high pressure that's strengthening in the region. That means a little bit more of a north and westerly wind coming into the area before the winds get a little more variable in the inside passage. We're going to hold on to that southerly flow coming up the Lynn Canal. A little bit more of an offshore push wrapping off of Port Alexander, 20 knots and 5-foot seas there. And for the outer coast of southeast, you're looking at 15 knots and 6-foot seas, an onshore flow working its way into the inner channels there as high pressure still moving around. For Prince William Sound, northeasterly should be light to small seas, fair winds, but certainly looking at rain. South and southwesterly should be light coming up Cook Inlet, 10 knots there with 2 to 3-foot seas, and around the Barren Islands winds remain fairly light as well, 3 to 4-foot seas across the northwest Gulf. You'll notice again as high pressure moves a little bit further to the east, we'll keep that southerly flow over the Barrens and through Cook Inlet. Southeasterlies coming into the Barrens and westerlies outside of Resurrection Bay. Light winds continue inside of Prince William Sound at 10 knots with a 2-foot sea. For the Bristol Bay region, light winds from the south, 3-foot seas expected there. Southerlies across the Alaska Peninsula, 10 to 20 knots with 4 to 6-foot seas. Looking at south and southwesterlies on either side of Kodiak Island, 2 to 3-foot seas there for Thursday. A little bit more of an east and northeasterly flow developing across the region with low pressure strengthening to the south. That's going to draw in more wind across the region as we go through your Friday. Easterlies coming up to 15 knots inside of Bristol Bay. Your strongest wind should be just south of the peninsula, around 25 knots with 5 to 6-foot seas on Friday. For Thursday, winds remain fairly light across the Aleutians. We'll see some small crafts in the region, but easterlies will be the main draw here, about 10 to 25 knots at their strongest, which you'll see out in the west of Kiska to Attu, 25 knots with 9-foot seas. Otherwise, light south and westerly winds for Nikolsky and on Alaska, and on either side about 4 to 5-foot seas expected there for Thursday. For Friday, we get into a little bit more of that dominant flow from low pressure just to the south. You'll see that north and easterly flow starting to win the day. 15 to 25 knots at the best, 5 to 6-foot seas in most areas. We're looking at northeasterlies between Adak and Kiska. That'll bring you 7-foot seas, and southeasterlies from Kiska to Shemya with 7-foot seas on that 15-knot wind again from the south and east on Friday. For the west coast, look for southwesterlies to be a little stronger flowing into Norton Sound, 20 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas. A little bit of a variable flow here as high pressure is trying to establish itself across the western and eastern Bering Sea. Otherwise, 15 knots and 4 to 5-foot seas should do it on Thursday. You'll notice that things are getting a little more organized up across the north, feeding into low pressure across the Brooks Range, getting us about 20 to 25 knots, 5 to 6-foot seas there. And once again, under that ridge, we'll have more of a light and variable flow, 10 to 15 knots and 2 to 3-foot seas on Friday, just south and west of the Kuskokwim Delta. For the north, this is where we're really going to notice a lot more wind, about 20 to 25 knots across the Chukchi coast, 6 to 7-foot seas there, and still looking at ice across the Beaufort Sea coast, but there may be some areas in the marginal ice zone that certainly do have some open water, so keep a watch on that. 20 to 25 knots from the west. Winds diminish on Friday. Still blustery around Kaktovik, but the high wind warning should be released. As you look down toward the Chukchi Sea, about 15 to 25 knots in the region, with seas holding around 3 to as high as 5 feet as we go through Friday. Once again, high surf advisories continue in that area as we go through the early afternoon tomorrow from areas east of the Utqiagvik all the way out toward Kaktovik, and high wind warnings around the eastern Beaufort Sea coast at least through early tomorrow morning before the winds should subside. Gusts may reach upwards of 60 miles per hour. Colder air is trying to drop southward. It'll likely stall out there as we head into tomorrow and Friday. Meanwhile, many along the Gulf Coast will be looking at persistent showers through the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound. Southeast generally dry. Low pressure is just to your south. We'll get a stronger push of low pressure coming up the western Gulf as we get into Friday. Showers will continue in south central and up north.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.